Guys, looks like it started because Ukrainians were able to blind Russians in Crimea. Then they also inflicted enormous losses on the Russian positions in Krynky. And right now it looks like it might be the best potential for Ukrainians to finally cross Dnipro river and start liberating the rest of Kherson region. But more about all of this in just a couple of minutes. What's up, investors? It's the Russian dude. And let's get straight to the point and talk about some ridiculous Russian propaganda. Whew. Today, once again, battle Babushkas and one battle Dedushka, who are carrying the Soviet flags and are talking about the sovereignty, independence of Russia, the motherland, the sacred debt of every single Russian person, every single Russian citizen to give up their life to protect Putin. And all of these, which does not sound any militaristic at all, does not sound like anything crazy or Z-Patriotic at all. All of this is just the pre-elections campaign of Vladimir Putin, allegedly not sponsored in any way by his subordinates. Throughout the video you will be able to see how those battle Babushkas, they approach just regular pedestrians on the street and they say, Putin is the best one, right? Say it, Putin is our one only leader, say it right now, or I'm gonna give up to you to the police and they're gonna mobilize your son. And the ones who are just passing by, they say, yes, Putin is good, I support it, just can I go now? Well, that's pretty much like a typical Z-Patriots in Russia. And basically every single time I'm thinking to myself that the Russian propaganda might be just absolutely way too ridiculous to believe in it, then I always come across videos like this. And unfortunately, it still works. So yeah, that's okay. Let's just leave them be and talk about something more important. Right now I'm gonna give you an extremely quick update from the east, and then we're gonna go to the south, where there are extremely good news from several settlements, specifically from Krynky, and potentially we might have a very good opportunity for Ukrainians to finally start crossing the Dnipro river. But first of all, just one quick stop in Russian city called Oryol, where recently at least two allegedly Ukrainian drones were able uninterruptedly enter the Russian airspace and landed right inside the Russian oil reservoirs, which caused some very loud noises and big balls of fire. And as we go back to Ukraine, specifically to Kupiansk frontline, recently the commander-in-chief Valery Zaluzhny and even the Minister of Defense Rustem Umerov, they visited the Ukrainian soldiers fighting along this combat zone. And they were talking with the soldiers, asking them what they need, asking about their future plans, and proposing some military strategies, which are obviously unknown to us, the general public. But just the fact that such high military officials of Ukraine were able to get so close to the actual front lines is already something what we'll probably never see Shoigu or Gerasimov do. Next we go to Luhansk region, where Ukrainians were able to destroy a brand new and very unusual military target of the Russians, which is called Tirada 2. And this is basically a satellite suppression system. This thing has been developed only in 2019. Russians only started using this allegedly recently, and Ukrainians still were able to discover it and eliminate it. I would say that this is one of the very first cases of such highly innovative equipment being destroyed. Next we go to Mykolaiv, located to the south of Lysychansk, and Ukrainians were able to destroy an anti-tank firing position of Russians. Our next stop brings us closer to Bakhmut area, specifically to Klishivka, where as a result of a failed Russian offensive, they lost at least 3 armored vehicles. And then already going down all the way to Avdiivka area, specifically to the settlement called Novoselivka Druha, Ukrainians were able in counter-battery fire able to destroy a Russian rocket artillery system called TOS-1A. Speaking about Avdiivka itself, Ukrainians were able to destroy yet another heavy flamethrower of Russians called Solntsepek, and the ball of fire is truly enormous. The full uncensored version will be as always on my Patreon. And then combined Klishchiivka and Avdiivka, Russians attempted 4 assaults in the last 24 hours, and Ukrainians were able to repel all of them. And yet another attack where Russians are trying to advance, another area where Russians are trying to advance is to the south of Marinka. This settlement called Nova Mikhailivka, where Ukrainians recently took back a pretty big chunk of land. And unfortunately, as every single other city where Russians are actively advancing, they turn it pretty much to the dust. Every single building is destroyed and brought to ruins. And as you can see, unfortunately, Nova Mikhailivka is going through exactly the same consequences. And so yes, now let me give you a similar quick update from the south before we can talk about very fortunate events that are happening right now for Ukrainians in Krynky, which potentially might even open them a very big opportunity to cross Dnipro river. And guys, as always, the best way to support the channel is by simply liking this video and subscribing to my channel. Only takes 1 second and it does help tremendously. So thank you so much. You can also follow me on Instagram to see how I live outside of YouTube. The link is down below. And so yes, speaking about the south, right here is the video from Verbohe, where Russians were trying to just drive across a peaceful road as they thought, which somehow was full of already destroyed Russian military vehicles. And surprise, surprise, this armored personnel carrier BMP-2 was also destroyed on one of Ukrainian mines. But then we just have to make a quick stop in Crimea, because if you remember, Ukrainians were heavily attacking the peninsula over the last several days. And right here, for example, is the satellite image from Saki, which was one of the target of Ukrainians. And reportedly, the locals were reporting some very loud noises coming from the command post located in this city, and then also from an airfield located closer to Yevpatoria. But most importantly, once again over the last several days, the main targets of Ukrainian attacks were the ammunition warehouses, radars, satellites and other electronic warfare equipment. Majority of these Ukrainian attacks were pretty successful. That is why right now Russians consider themselves temporarily blinded in Crimea. So in case Ukrainians continue their attacks, they will not be as effective in intercepting Ukrainian missiles and drones. And as a result, just in the last 3 to 4 days alone, Ukrainians were able to destroy a command post in Sevastopol, air defense military unit near Yevpatoria, a warehouse of ammunition and weapons near Pervomayske, and then another command post and airfield near Saki. And according to the British intelligence report, the Ukrainian Defense Intelligence already took the responsibility of these attacks, which started back in January 4th. And of course, we simply cannot ignore truly devastating events for Russians in Krynky, so let's talk about this right now, and which kind of possibilities it opens for Ukrainians. And first of all, it is obviously not just Ukrainians who try to advance next to Krynky, it is also Russians who are trying to destroy the bridgehead of Ukrainians. But unfortunately for them, they are not as successful. Such as, for example, in one of the most recent attacks which Ukrainians were able to repel, Russians lost at least 5 tanks and other armored vehicles. And just for example, right here is the video from Krynky where one of Russian tanks is being completely obliterated. There is simply no way it will be able to be repaired. There is also this compilation of Ukrainian artillery attacks and drone footage. Also, all of this comes to us from Krynky. And as you can see, pretty much Russians stand absolutely no chance at all. You will be able to see it for yourself if you will be able to see this uncensored version of this video. Unfortunately not available on YouTube, but you can see it on my Patreon. The link is down below. There is 1 week of free access for every single one of you guys to try if you like the service or not. The link is once again down below. But unfortunately, Ukrainians are the ones right now who need to advance, and Russians are a little bit in much advantageous, I would say, position because they're simply defending. That is why Russians, as always, they do a lot of artillery attacks against the settlement itself. Hopefully there are not that many civilians left, hopefully majority or even all of them already left. Because as you can see from this picture, just like with Marinka, just like with Avdiivka, just like with Bakhmut, just like with Novomikhailivka, Krynky is almost fully destroyed to the ground. And you know what? The military unit of Russians, which is primarily responsible for repelling the offensive of Ukrainians, are the Russian paratroopers. We call them VDV, which are under the command of Mikhail Teplinsky, this very suspicious in understanding of Putin general, which he tried so many times in the past to get rid of him, because he was complaining that the Russian army is simply not using highly trained soldiers, and he was basically telling the truth, that the Russian soldiers are forced to go into this war with bare minimum preparations. And according to him, this is once again exactly what is happening right now in Krynky. He receives a lot of subordinates who simply do not know what they are doing, with little to none military experience, and they are located in one of the hottest battle zones in the entire Ukraine. So once again, this potentially confirms the idea that Putin wants to either get rid of this guy, Mikhail Teplinsky, or maybe in case Krynky will be lost and Ukrainians will start crossing Dnipro river and liberating the rest of Kherson region, guess what? Mikhail Teplinsky will be the one who the Russian propaganda, the Russian media will be blaming for this failure. And obviously, since these soldiers and even officers, they have so little experience, the losses of Russians in Krynky are pretty much enormous. The only reason, the only way they're still being able to protect this settlement, it is because there is constant infusion of the new force. And besides that, according to the Russian soldiers fighting in this area, whenever they talk with their relatives on the phone, they're even reporting that sometimes they're just sitting in trenches for days straight under Ukrainian artillery attacks or even without it, and they receive absolutely no supplies at all, bare minimum water and food. And so, as a result of all this, right now it does feel that the Russian forces in Krynky at least, they're fighting with their last energy, with their last power, and maybe, just maybe, in the near future they might be forced to withdraw from this settlement. Either this will be an order from the higher military commandment, or they will simply abandon it themselves, because they will simply see that there is absolutely no reason for them to stay and defend it anymore. And so you can probably already guess where I'm going. There is very enormous losses of Russians in Krynky, especially next to this bridgehead over Dnipro river. Then also, if you remember, in the last week of 2023, Russians lost at least three, and then couple more fighter jets, Sus, and this severely affected the defenses of Russians in the south, specifically in Kherson region, according to this British intelligence report. And so, at this point, it is, I think, pretty much obvious, as soon Russians will have enough, and they will once again either withdraw themselves or they will abandon the positions in regards to whether there are orders from the officers or not. This will be an extremely good opportunity for the rest of the Ukrainian army to start crossing Dnipro river, expand the bridgehead, bring their military vehicles and equipment, and start the ultimate liberation of Kherson region. Hopefully, this will happen sooner rather than later. I'll be closely watching the development of this situation, and if you don't want to miss any of these crucial for this war updates, which might set the tone for the rest of the year 2024, you already know what to do. Simply subscribe to my channel. Only takes one single small little click. Thank you so much, my patrons, for your support, and see you tomorrow.